Presidential candidate? Channel swimmer? Movie star? No. It's a tech sergeant coming home to Pittsburgh on a furlough. That's his mother. Her sight is failing, but she can still pick out a greenback Kelly in a crowd. She's been dreaming about this minute for a couple of years. All of Chuck's brothers were there, too. 6 of them in uniform. Looked like a pipe dream furlough cooked up by a PFC asleep in 2 feet of rainwater. Even the beginning was something like a dream when Mark Clark gave Kelly the Congressional Medal of Honor in Africa. By an official tally, Kelly had knocked out 40 Germans in less than an hour and had taken command first of a platoon and then of a company. Chuck wasn't a general's hero. When the news of his award reached the men of his outfit somewhere up in north of Italy, they were as proud as Kelly himself. So back home, they offered him downtown Pittsburgh on a platter, but he said no thanks. Kelly's old home was in the 23rd Ward, and that's what he wanted to see. He wanted to stuff a plug of tobacco into his left cheek and walk down the streets where he used to play mush ball. Down at Jake's, the barber was still asleep the way he'd been 2 years ago when Kelly went away. During his years overseas, Kelly had a lot of time to make up a list of the things he wanted to do when he got home, and sleeping in a barber chair wasn't far down on the list. Jake was still talking about Barrett's triple play for the Pirates and about how hot it was for May and about the time he got a hot tip on a horse named Espion that paid 30 to 1. Jake told Kelly that Pittsburgh had changed. All the young men had gone. All the mills were on war contracts. If Chuck told anyone about what he'd seen in Italy, he'd rather tell the people he had known since he was a kid. He'd rather show his medals to the neighbors and to the mayor or the newspaper reporters or the autograph hunters. Congressional Medal of Honor, Silver Star, British Military Medal, Afro-European campaign. He was the first enlisted man to cop that much glory, but he'd pass up all the banquets and the parades for a glass of cold, strong Pittsburgh brew and the smell of a local saloon and some talk with the fathers and brothers of his friends.
Chuck, how'd you find things in Italy?
Well, the Nazis sure gave the people over there a bum deal. And boy, they sure would like to get at us.
Say, Bill, whatever happened to Tommy Boyle?
He's overseas. There's his picture over there.
Sweeney, O'Leary, Goldstein, Caradona, McGuire, scattered all over hell and gone.
Hey, Chuck. A little surprise for you, Chuck.
Has anybody here seen Kelly? K-double-L-Y. Has anybody here seen Kelly?
Sure, they saw a lot of Kelly in the 23rd Ward. They saw him taking Mrs. Kelly to a double feature at the Orpheum where you don't have to stand in line for tickets. They saw that Mrs. Kelly would rather look at Chuck than any wagon chase on the screen. They saw him in the corner drugstore after the first show drinking a chocolate soda with 2 scoops of vanilla ice cream. They saw him over at Wingassen's filling station where Chuck used to work before that afternoon in '42 when he and Howard Getz went downtown and enlisted.
Go ahead, Bob.
Have you heard from Jim lately?
Why, yes, Jim's over in the South Pacific, but I didn't think that would interest you a whole lot after what you've seen in Italy.
I don't know. It's all part of the same war.
Charlie Wingassen told Chuck that Pittsburgh had changed. Not on the surface, perhaps, but open the door at any shop or a mill and you could see the change yourself. Castings for washing machines, automobiles, girders, been changed to castings for 155s. Kelly had seen these guns in action. He remembered the good feeling it gave him to know that the artillery was there. It was in his hometown that these big guns began the journey that would take them by train and boat and train again up into the steep mountain passes of France and Italy, up the long hot haul from Iran into Russia, to the Pacific, to India, to any part of the world that was in range of enemy lines. 2 years of war changed Kelly. 2 years of war changed Pittsburgh. Kelly was firing a .37 at the Germans on the day he won his award for bravery. Looked a lot cleaner, a lot newer, but they were making the same gun in Pittsburgh that had saved Kelly's life on a dusty road one day behind the Rapido River.
You sure got a lot of use out of these babies.
What have you got here, Chuck? Letter from your girl. No, these are orders report back for duty.
Sure did a swell job over there.
Your boy could have done the same thing.
Ah, you're the first smartest Irishman I ever met.
No, you just got to be there and have the stuff to do it with. I was there, and we had the stuff to do it with.
Give him hell when you get back.
I sure will.
Furloughs end even for Irishmen who'll get the Congressional Medal of Honor. But before he left, Kelly took a look back at Pittsburgh, back at the houses crowded along the bluff, the smoke and the power and the might of one of the greatest industrial cities in the world. The last he saw of Pittsburgh was the smoke above the Monongahela and the Allegheny, where the mills were turning out steel for the 37s and the 155s, for the rifles and tanks that he would need as soon as he got back.
Not many knew of the existence of Naval Task Force 58 until it cracked down on the Japs off Sai Pan. Assembled in secret, a new and mighty weapon forged by the millions of men and women in American labor. Deck space on these flat tops, 1.25 million square feet of timber. Number of planes these flat tops can launch, 1,000. A gigantic floating American airfield designed to reverse the direction of traffic in the Pacific. It did. Our infantry GIs and Marines had just secured beachheads on Sai Pan. Task Force 58 was standing by to keep out Jap reinforcements. Then we learned that Tokyo carrier-based planes were swarming our way. The following shows what happened to them. Final score, 428. The world's all-time single-day record for planes knocked out of the air by any nation anywhere. Then we sent our fighters and bombers after the Jap fleet itself. But with their planes destroyed, they streaked for the mainland. We hounded them as long as our gas and bombs held out. Auxiliary gas tank being dumped. One of our boys returning. He got rid of the fire, but the kettle's still steaming. Yes, he'll make the nearest flat top okay. And now, with the skies swept clean of Jap interference, we bolstered our beachheads on Saipan, sent in the rest of our men, gave them all their waiting supplies. Today, Saipan is ours. With weapons like Task Force 58, with those other weapons being turned out by American workers, this double-barreled war will have a double-barreled finish. Germany and Japan, allies in defeat.
After the tornado of fire, after the hail of death has passed over, this is the havoc that's left. A tangled heap of iron, steel, engines. Some of it belonged to the enemy, some of it was ours. As the war storm moves on, these precious ruins become part of our victory. For battle junk is treasure. Priceless parts and equipment that will ransom American lives on a future battlefield. Here in Italy, as in all other war sectors, a collection company of the Army Service Forces goes on a treasure hunt behind the lines. A hunt for anything and everything that can be salvaged, reconditioned, melted down to be used against the enemy. Little Italian citizens pitch in. Here, one is paid in the universal currency of children, candy. Wherever a plane has been shot down, a tank decommissioned, a machine immobilized, the collecting company appears, stripping usable parts. The rest is carted away to the repair battalion depots, supervised by the Army Quartermaster Corps. These depots behind every front are the Army's answer to the waste of war. Here, what Americans spent hours, days, weeks to make is retrieved from the battlefield. The repair battalion sorts the day's find, arranging mountains of steel girders, plane wings, tires, uniforms. After sorting uniforms, blankets, clothing of all kinds are repaired by Italian workers under the direction of the Army. What were battle-torn uniforms are now ready for further wear and tear. What were trench-stained blankets will now take another round at the front after a cleaning and drying session at the local spaghetti factory. To the repair battalions, nothing is junk. Canteens are given air pressure treatment. Battered cans swell back into shape. Mess kits made new after lye and sulfuric acid baths. Precision instruments are reset to hair trigger accuracy. What the repair battalions cannot put together is shipped home for workers to melt down, rebuild, and return for further use. Behind every front, behind every line, the treasure hunt goes on wheels, and on foot. The foot soldier, who always has a chance for a more leisurely contact with the local scenery, rarely comes back from the front or from a busman's holiday behind the lines without something to show for it. He knows the weapons he fights with are those he lives by. The guns, the instruments, the countless articles of war, small and large, made behind the front, of which there can never be enough. He knows one extra gun, one extra part, one more piece of equipment thrown into the battle can give him one more chance to salvage the greatest treasure of all, people.
cities of Normandy are quiet now. The battle's moved on. No fires, no bullets, no Germans left. Only the memory of all of them. Down there in the rubble, a Yank is leaving town, moving on with the rest of the war. He's learned a lot, this boy. He's found that these towns are like Arawa and Oran and Naples. Quiet places now. Places on maps to which he fought his way, so that he might move on. Local stations. Normandy is his, and the cities are quiet. But they weren't just before he got there. Yes, the boy's pretty wise. He's learned who his allies are, from the tiny dry cell battery in his walkie-talkie to the castings and the engines in the planes in the skies above. The sky fighters who were blistering the German reinforcements before they could get started, quarantining the Cherbourg Peninsula. Stripes A20s. They're bombs walking a tightrope. This boy, not far from playing cops and robbers in the streets of home, played a different game in the streets of Cherbourg. He called the sniper's bullets incoming mail. There was some outgoing mail, too. This Yank had learned another thing. He had learned who the enemy was. A year or so ago, the enemy was a vague word in a military pamphlet. Now he was somebody who lurked behind the hedges and in the buildings, waiting to kill long after the battle had ended. Somebody who booby-trapped the dead. Somebody who raised a flag of truce, then shot the American officers who came up to take him. The enemy wasn't vague anymore. He was as real as the freshly dug graves of this soldier's friends. Yes, like the Russians whose homes had been meaninglessly pillaged. Like the English whose homes even at the moment were being blasted by robot bombs. Like the Chinese, like his allies, the Yank knew his enemies. There was some final cleaning up to do. The American soldier had taken Normandy, but he knew it was only part of his job. He knew his enemies were many, and not just here in a corner of France. He knew he had to move on to meet them, wherever they were.